Okay, so starting with the again conflicts, the definition of what is the conflict and what are the types of conflict that could happen, right? And what is the source from where exactly these conflicts really get origin? What are the causes? Okay, and how do you resolve, right? And various techniques that you actually so uh, various techniques that you really apply when it comes to the resolving the conflict at the workplace, right? And these are the techniques that that would actually would be there. So coming to see in this particular chapter there is some kind of an overlap as far as the definitions are concerned, but so I'll anyway clarify as we go, right? I'll tell the example as well. So let's start with definition first. So definition of conflict, I think this is the easy part. It's a mere disagreement, right? It is a situation where people perceive a threat, so they actually disagree with, I mean, threat could be related to various aspects, but anyway there is a disagreement between the people, right? And tends to respond on the basis of perception. So it's more about perception which causes the conflict. So reality could be different, but if you perceive it in a different way, that is where conflict could happen. And it could be reality as well, but perception plays a bigger role, right? And it does have various dimensions. So it could be substantive, real. It could be, it could be based on some real incidents or some procedure. It could be a psychological. So it can be of various things, right? And it is a normal experience within the work environment. Let's say if two conflicting groups are trying to grab a project or whatever it is, right? They want project for themselves, so conflict is inevitable. It's kind of a very much normal and expected in certain cases, and it is predictable, right? So typically you would observe this when it comes to role change exercises, where you would have limited slots and you want as a manager your candidate to be nominated for that particular slot, and you are supposed to actually go and fight with other group where other manager would be projecting his candidate, because slot is one. Now you both has got an interest to actually compete that, and both knows that there is going to be a conflict, so it is very predictable and expected, right? So so basically problem solving strategies are essential in order to actually get this particular conflict management in a very positive way, right? So so now comes so that is what is the definition of conflict. This is what conflict is all about, right? So now going into the types of conflict. So this is the type of conflict which would have within the individual as well. So it is these types of conflicts that we are talking about is within the individual, where you have an approach conflict. What exactly it means is individual is motivated to approach two or more goals, but they are exclusive. So they don't, these two goals doesn't interfere, but you want to go towards goal one, you want to go towards goal two, both goals. That is approach, right? Where individual, so there is a conflict which goal to choose, right? So but both goals are not related as such. And second one is approach avoidance, right? So individual is both motivated to approach a goal and also motivated to avoid. So you have one goal, and this goal, in some angle you want to go and achieve it, in some angle you don't want to do it, right? So basically this is like you have like conflict within you, whether I need to go for this goal or whether I should avoid this. Okay, so now let's say now comes avoidance. So it is just, if you see all these three, it is just playing around with the word of approach and avoidance, and it is permutations and combinations of it. Okay, so avoidance, where you have two goals or two or more goals, and you want to avoid all the goals. Okay, so it is of this kind of a conflict. So these are the three types of conflict an individual would have. So now going into a into a source of interpersonal conflicts, right? So from where exactly the what exactly is the sources when it comes to a conflict between individuals. Okay, so when it comes to conflict between individuals, conflict could happen because of personal differences. It could be misinformation. Basically, there is some information which is missing, so hence there is a conflict. It could be role incompatibility. We already talked about a conflict here, right? Where we are saying that normal experience within the work environment. So basically, here in certain cases, the role is such that you have to go and fight. Okay, so the role incompatibility and environmental stress. So it could so happen that you are stressed out for multiple reasons. Your job is in line. Now you need to actually go and fight with it, right? So in order to save yourself, your unit is going to be downsized, or your project is going to go. I mean, funding is not going to be projected for your project, etc., etc. So environmental stress would also cause conflicts. So now coming to so we first talked about within a person, then we talked about between the people. Now we are talking about between groups. Okay, so so here when it comes to group, there could be like competition for resources. You want resource within your project, in your unit, the other unit wants the same resource or whatever it is. Task interdependence. You want to finish a task which is and the other unit is not really cooperating to you, right? So there is an interdependence, hence there could be a conflict. Okay, status struggle. So status struggle. So to elevate your own unit or your own group. Ambiguity. So now there is some ambiguity within what exactly you are supposed to do, what exactly they are supposed to do. So these are the various intergroup conflicts that could be possible. So now coming to structural conflicts. So these are conflicts which are more in structural nature when it comes to structure of an organization. Hierarchical conflict. So basically, conflict could be around hierarchy. It could be functional. Basically, what kind of job that you will have to do. Okay, and it could be a line and staff conflict, right? Formal and informal conflict. So, what is formal? What is informal? What a manager and staff, right? What are the functional things that I need to do? What exactly is the hierarchical and what is the hierarchy of it? Whom I should actually report to, or what should be the structure, right? So these are all various types of structural conflicts that could happen. Okay, so we talked about individual, interpersonal, intergroup, and then structural. These are the types of conflicts that we talked about. Okay. So now coming to causes of conflict, why conflict is going to be there. So to some extent in the definition as well, so it's kind of a little bit of a repetition that actually the conflict management does have, conflict unit does have. Right now, what are the sources? I mean, what causes conflict, right? Conflict. So this is exactly what I was talking about. There is some kind of an inconsistency or rather repetition here. The source of interpersonal conflict would also have the, I mean, source and cause is almost like a similar words, right? So, but what I could say is these are the types of interpersonal conflict, or rather, I mean, it's under types of conflict. Okay, so now coming to causes, right? But again, it is going to be very similar, where conflict is normal, necessary part of healthy relationships. So conflict is mismanaged, and if conflict is mismanaged, then it can harm the relationship. If conflict is handled respectful, then it is going to be very positive, and it provides an opportunity for growth, and ultimately it is going to strengthen the bond between two people. Okay, so conflict arises from differing needs. Basically, what this is telling is, I mean, conflict can be so you have, everybody has got different needs. right? When there is actually challenges in meeting those particular needs, that is where the conflict could actually come, right? So that is exactly what this is trying to say. When conflict, when we are saying that conflict arises from differing needs, everybody has got needs, and if there are needs are actually differing in nature, that is where uh, the comfort and safety and other aspects are going to be challenged, right? So it opens the pathways to create, I mean, to creative problem solving, team building, improved relationships. So if you actually employ right techniques to manage the conflict, it is going to be a very positive. It is going to even further improve your relationship, rather strengthen your relationship. If you ignore it, then it is going to deteriorate. So mismanagement is going to have a very negative effect. Positive, I mean, managing it not only going to resolve that conflict and provide the solution, it is going to strengthen the relationship. That is exactly what is the underlying point, right? Is it's more, it's more than a disagreement. It is not just about disagreement. This is more than a disagreement, is what conflict is, right? So if you just leave it, it is not just going to affect that particular statement or that particular situation. It is going to affect overall situation between this particular group or employees or whatever that we are talking. Okay, it is going to continue to fester when ignored. Okay, response to the conflicts is based on our perception. Basically, way that we respond is based on our perceptions. It could be different from reality, but the perception plays the greater deal. It triggers the strong emotions, okay, and it provides an opportunity for growth. Okay, so conflict resolution. So what is conflict resolution? Basically, there is a conflict, then you are trying to actually resolve it. How exactly you can resolve it? So as an individual, what I need to actually foster to actually resolve it, right? I need to increase my understanding if I have to resolve, right? So that is that is required, and I need to increase the group cohesion. Basically, I need to be able to actually go and talk to others, have a healthy relationship with others, but others, right, within the group. And we self knowledge. So you need to have the actual real knowledge, so that after understanding, you should be able to give solutions. You should be able to have that particular effective way of solving that particular problem. So your self knowledge should be, should be there. So these are the three main aspects that you would really require to do a conflict resolution. Okay. So now comes resolution styles. Every individual does actually do resolve. So I didn't make notes of this resolution style here, because I think during Viva we made it in some other section. We copy it from there to here. So this is something that we already got in our practical thing, where we did actually go through that conflict management scale, and we measured what are our dominant conflict resolution style, and what is our weak style, right? So basically, there is a scoring that we have done and identified which style that we have very strong hold and which style we are weak. So there are 5 styles. So during that time, we would have learned to some extent, right? Competitive. So basically here, what is competitive? It is like authoritarian approach, where you are saying that you have this particular, so there is a conflict between individuals, and you are actually saying that I'm saying this, just go and implement. That's all. I'm not resolving the conflict by taking the other's interest. It is my own interest. That's all. Okay. Collaborative. Collaborative is both win-win. I will give a solution in such a way that neither you have a problem nor I have a problem. Collaborative. Compromising. Okay, fine. You have certain goals, I have certain goals. Let's actually come to a middle ground. So I will forego some, you forego some. And we both, it's not a complete 100% win-win, but I compromise some, you compromise some, and we came to a middle ground. Fourth, accommodating, where what you are actually saying is, okay, fine, you want this to happen, okay, I'll drop my goal, I'll accommodate yours. Okay, avoiding, you don't even do the conflict resolution, you just avoid the problem. Okay, so these are the 5 styles of conflict resolution. So I'm not going into depth because I think we already did during our practicals. So let me know, we will have, if we have to actually go into the next level, but I believe most of us are aware of this. Okay, I say it as, I take it as yes. So going to the next, interest-based relational approach. So this is another, this is an approach, I mean, overall approach suggested by one of the scientists. I didn't note the scientist's name here. But all this is talking about is people are more important than your goal. See that from that perspective and start doing the conflict resolution. You take relationship as the first priority, that is people are first. You don't want to go into that to just achieve your goal. You don't want to actually disrupt your relationship. At the same time, you want to resolve the conflict. So it's not about accommodating. So don't get confused with accommodating, where you are giving people the more weightage and you are dropping your goals. That is not the case. But in the process of resolution, you are not really disrupting your relationship. That's what is interest-based relation approach. You keep, we have to keep people and problems separate. Basically, you're going to solve the problem without really developing that enmity. You have to take things positively as far as the relationship is concerned, right? You pay attention to the interests that are being presented. You listen first and talk second, right? Set out facts. Basically, you collect the facts and have that particular facts discussed, right? Explore options together. So, but here the main point here is people and relationships are the first priority. Goals comes second. Rather, you resolve the goals, taking relationships as the first priority. Okay, that is what is this relation. So relational approach, you can probably take it from that name. Principle of conflict resolution. Okay, so keep it calm, be magnanimous. I think these words really talk about the things pretty straightforward. Keep it calm. Obviously, if you become animated, a resolution will not happen. You need to actually, be very, very patient, calm, right? And you need to be magnanimous. So basically, you should be able to see picture uh, beyond that particular small difference. You need to have that particular bigger picture, right? And discussion and debate. So it's important to actually discuss. Okay, unless and until you discuss, you can't really resolve. Rationality, so you need to be logical. You can't really be irrational and then try to solve it, right? Acknowledge emotions. If they are angry, you need to acknowledge, yes, you need to actually understand why they are angry or whatever it is, right? So think creatively. So in order to actually solve a conflict, you will have to probably think out of the box. So if it is a straightforward thing, then conflict wouldn't have happened, right? Unless and until you think creatively, you can't really solve it. Change the environment. So basically, the conditions which has caused that particular conflict, you could actually change, right? Compromise. So obviously, to some extent, dropping your goals or dropping their particular goals, to some extent, compromise comes into picture, right? Change the wording. So if there is an agreement or a settlement or whatever that is going to come into picture, I think that changing the words here and there would really, make things comfortable and resolve the conflict. Accept the situation. If there is something that is not going to be possible, which is going to affect others, which you need to actually drop, you need to be realistic in nature. So accept the situation. Don't go really emotional and try to actually put your goal in front when compared to, and not care about the other kind of a thing. right? So these are the principles of conflict resolution. Okay. So now going into resolving the conflict. So now here, these are the principles, and we are now talking about some of the techniques that individuals should actually develop. So this is kind of repeating when you take this particular section, right? We are talking about increasing the understanding, group cohesion, self knowledge. This is also talking about the same thing in a different way, where you are saying good self control. You need to actually control yourself in a better way. You have to be a patient listener. Okay. And you need to have a give and take attitude to resolve. So these are the things that an individual should actually develop in order to actually resolve a conflict. Okay. Confront the conflict. So basically, you need to go and deal with the conflict to resolve it. If you don't deal with it, then you can't really solve it, right? So, so confront the possible negative issues in the relationship. You go and deal with that. Right? Have to encourage both people to look at the possible positive sides to their relationship. Right? Even though you are uncomfortable in doing all these things are something that you really require to do. Have to search various options. You can start gaining greater commitment for them. Right? So all these statements are in a way self-explanatory. If you read this once, I think you should be able to understand each one of these particular statements. Right? Know the feedback and cost of non-compliance. Right? Need evaluation and re-evaluation. Need for summarization. So all these things are something which is required when you actually go and confront the conflict. Okay, so now comes techniques of resolution conflict. Okay, so if I let me just open the unit here. Let it load. So where we are until now, we kind of covered the conflicts, types of conflicts. We covered conflict resolution, principle of conflict resolutions. Now we are going into these particular techniques, various techniques associated with conflict resolution. Okay. Um, so now going into it, cover this. bargaining and negotiating. Okay, so basically what we are actually saying here is you should be able to bargain to reach an agreement, right? And you should actually negotiate. So next is you should have the negotiation range. Basically, this is just a little variation from the above. Here we are saying that bargain and get whatever you want, okay, or give and take whatever that you want, right? Here it is like have that particular range. So typical way of generally what we do in bargaining is this bargaining range, where you say you want to sell your vehicle or car for 5,000 and somebody says 4,000 and you finally reach to a middle ground of 4,600 or whatever it is, right? So that is what is this particular range is. Okay, so now comes negotiated rule making. Okay, so basically it's like you negotiate and you come to frame the rules or as a rule book that you are going to actually go and follow. Okay, so it is like, I mean, it typically happens within associations like apartment associations are where when there is a conflict, then you actually go and correct the rule book so that in future there are no conflicts, right? So, so next is negotiator's dilemma or claiming the value, right? So claiming value is taking of resources during a conflict or negotiation. This is like opposite to creating the value. So it's like when exactly you need to actually associate a value, when to take value. So it is like it's typically the value is associated with the scenario that you are in as far as this particular conflict is concerned. So it is like when to actually escalate your value, when to actually downgrade the value that is associated with it is the dilemma that this is actually talking about. Okay, so this is something that you will have to know in order to actually deal with that particular conflict, right? So mediation, I think the name itself is very explanatory, where you actually, when there is a conflict, you bring some third party in between who is going to actually solve your conflict. Okay, so these are all various techniques to solve, and these techniques are more in legal nature when compared to the other techniques that we are talking about, right? Whether it comes to a bargaining or negotiating or bargaining range or negotiating the rule making or claiming the value or mediation, this is more very business type, or rather very legal type kind of a techniques that are being talked about. Okay, now there are 10 steps in, so now other part in techniques of conflict resolution, right? There are 10 steps that you could actually follow to resolve a conflict. Okay, first thing is about setting up a meeting, right? You need to actually set time, place, so that you could go and meet, right? The second aspect is defining the problem. So you need to actually come to a common consensus. What exactly is the problem? Unless and until you know what exactly is the problem, you can't really resolve it, right? And then how do you each contribute to the problem? So what are your roles in that particular problem? How you can actually contribute to that particular problem, right? And what all you did to resolve that conflict, and what, I mean, basically it could be various attempts that would have been made previously. What all those particular things, what all things that are failed, right? And then brainstorm. So now, okay, failed is failed, now what new that you could do, and list all the possibilities. Now in the possible solutions, you come to a consensus, you evaluate those solutions, and you agree on one solution, and you agree on what you and the other individual could do to get to that particular solution, and then have a follow up and see the progress. Okay, and last step is, once the conflict is resolved, reward each other. So as you go through the journey, have that positive interaction with each other. So when you say reward, basically have that positive interaction with each other, so that positivity really grows as the resolution happens. So these are the 10 steps in conflict resolution. Set time, define the problem, contribute to the what are your roles, right? And what exactly was done previously, what are the possibilities, discussing value. These are very, very general steps. I'm not going through in the details of it, right? uh, so these are self-explanatory. If you read these particular 10 steps, it will be clear for you. Right, now comes to the components of conflict resolution. So I think every chapter does have this particular component section. Okay, so what exactly are the components, which is to some extent is covered above as well. Get in touch with your feelings. This is the first part as far as the conflict resolution is concerned, especially when you are involved in the conflict, right? If you are the one who is in conflict, Get in touch with your feelings. Basically, understand yourself, what exactly you are going through, what are your thoughts, what you are expecting. Unless until you know yourself, you can't really go on to the negotiation table, or you can't really resolve the conflict with others. On your listening skills. It's not just about listening to yourself, you need to listen the other person as well. So you need to have good listening skills to go and listen to the others. Practice assertive communication. So you need to be very candid in terms of giving your feelings, giving your needs. So when I say candid, it is not about being rude, it is being about, this is a positive way of talking about as it is stuff, right? So basically it is not about going and fighting, or going and telling what you think about that particular being in a rude way, but it is about you telling your feelings and needs clearly. That clarity needs to be there, is what is this particular statement is all about, right? So important thing to remember is what's in your mind in a way which is clear and assertive, without being aggressive, underline, or putting the other person on defense. You should not really make other person defensive, right? Seek solution. This is also self-explanatory. All this particular paragraph you can write by yourself. Seek solution. You should actually have that particular discussion and go towards that particular solution. Know when it's not working. So if it is not working, you should be able to understand that it is not really working, right? That is what is know when it's not working. So healthy and unhealthy ways of managing and resolving conflict, right? So this table is also very, very self-explanatory. I don't think we really require to read this to write this, right? So obviously, if you have an inability to recognize and respond to the others, then you have a problem. It's an unhealthy way of doing it. Healthy way is you should be able to recognize and respond to the other person needs, right? You can't be explosive, angry, etc., etc. You should be calm, non-defensive, respectful. Reaction should be very moderated, right? Withdrawal of love, resulting in rejection, etc. Readiness to forgive and forget. You should actually not be very, what do you say? You should not take it as an enmity. You should rather be like forgiving and forgetful, even though it is not your mistake or their mistake or whatever it is. You should have that broad thinking, right? Inability to compromise, ability to seek compromise, fear and avoidance of conflict, facing the conflict. So this is unhealthy, this is healthy. I think these are all points that you can write by your own stuff, right? Next comes the successful resolution of conflict depends on your ability to, again, it is repetitive in nature, how you manage stress, how you control your emotions, how you pay attention to the other feelings, beware and respectful of the differences. So this is kind of repeating in a different way. That's all. Okay. So now comes stress and resolution of conflict. Okay, stress and conflict are very, very related. Okay. So most important thing that is that to actually relieve the conflict is the communication, and communication could be various ways. Okay, it can be exchanged in various ways, right? It can be verbal, it can be non-verbal. Okay, so so you should be able to relate or understand that particular stress using this particular communication, right? You should be able to accurately read the person in a normal non-verbal way and also verbal way, right? Hear what someone is really saying. You should be able to hear what somebody is saying, aware of your own feeling. You should be able to understand yourself, and you should understand the deep rooted needs. It's not just about what they are saying outer words, right? When they are saying it, you should be able to connect to what their deep rooted needs are. Sometimes it is not very, very evident in the words that they bring in. You should be able to actually understand that deep rooted needs, right? And you should be able to communicate your needs in a clear way. So once stress and emotion are brought into balance, obviously your capacity for joy, playfulness, etc., will improve, and this is going to foster that resolutions very easily, right? You can avoid all those particular confrontation, and you should be able to resolve it in a much better way. So in order to get that stress down in the entire conflict resolution process, these are something that you will have to do. So bringing the stress down is going to be very important. Okay. So you should be able to, I mean, again, point is coming back to the listening part. Okay, focus on the present. Don't really go to the, typically happens in, I think, the home fights where you always go into the history and say, tumne wo kiya tha, tumne wo kiya tha, etc. When it comes to conflict, don't really go into the history. Focus on present. What is the problem that is there in hand, and you weigh what is that you need to pick as a battle, right? You should not really pick everything as a battle. So you need to be actually, selective in what you are going to fight and what you are not going to fight, right? And be willing to forgive. So yes, it is a mistake, be willing to forgive. Okay, and know when to let go something, right? So basically these are the some things which are important to again, it is also related to stress and resolution of the conflict. So some reasons for conflict. So now, conflicts can cause stress, frustration, hostility, judgment, freedom. These points are very evident. What all conflict could cause, right? It could result in lack of confidence, detract the attainment of goals and objectives, right? Some reasons for conflict are like, yes, we read in the above on sources of the conflict. This is coming in just a little bit different way, but the points are same. Okay, so it's because there is a conflict between convergent and divergent thinking, status, economics, leadership styles. You have like stress, power struggle, inappropriate assignment, application and interpretation of rules and policies, allocation of resources and privileges. So these are all like some reasons to actually, of the conflict. Okay. So how exactly you can resolve the conflict, right? There are three ways of, first is preventive. So if you say, first of all, don't even leave the scope to actually get into a conflict. That is what preventive technique is all about. Okay, uh, so enhance your relationship, basically. Have the knowledge on in terms of what exactly the group dynamics are, what motivates people. Have that sense of humor. Always be positive. Okay, be attentive, listen to the other people. Don't really give that particular scope for getting into a conflict. That is what this preventive technique is talking about. Okay. So basically, personal qualification of principle, promoting, becoming involved in moral boosting social events. So basically go and involve yourself in social events so that your relationship really goes. Promoting effective up down down up communication. Basically you talk to your subordinates, you talk to your bosses, etc. That communication is important, right? Altering behavior through motivational seminars. You keep motivating people, peer evaluation, mentoring, etc. So these are some of the aspects which could help to prevent the conflict. Conflict doesn't even occur, right? These qualities include knowledge of group dynamics. You possess the qualities that enhance good working relationships. So these qualities are something that I just spoke about, right? So you need to have that knowledge of group dynamics, that motivational skills, etc. Sense of humor, you thinking about broad, being positive, and all those stuff. So those things would actually prevent the conflict altogether. Okay, so what are the other techniques? So this is a little bit different in nature when compared to the above text, right? So these techniques include, but not limited to, these particular sets. These are some of the techniques. Authoritative command. Okay, so conflict would not happen when you have this particular authoritative command. So if there is a leader, obviously leader can command and make sure that the teams really listen. And this is very, very successful in certain low level conflicts which are short term in nature mainly. So right. So the second is altering the human variable. So this is actually very difficult task, but this is mainly talking about human variable. So what is human variable? It is about altering the way the conflict parties think. You are fiddling their particular behavior itself. Okay, so this is not going to be straightforward, but all in the entire chapter, one thing is evident where the conflict is all about the perception, right? So basically, you are addressing the root cause of that perception. Okay, not just perception, the way that people really behave on that particular perception, right? That is exactly the altering the variable. Okay, altering the structural variable. You are altering the structure of the organization, regrouping them, right? Let's say if two team members are having conflict within that particular group, you are trying to actually make sure those two are in two different teams. There is no chance of conflict, right? So changing the structural aspect is something that that is that is going to resolve the conflict here. Okay. So now integration. So especially this is about aligning the goals and ideas. So you're going to actually bring a common consensus between two groups or individuals by having that particular discussion to get different goals or ideals not together basically, right? So this is achieved through face-to-face dialogue or brainstorming in order to understand the conflict and evaluate what suggestions. So basically you're bringing two things and trying to actually integrate those particular goals. Okay, so now consensus management. Okay, so basically here we are talking about I mean, so it's like you are trying to be like collecting various opinions. Okay, and you have that particular process in which you collect and make the decision from the collection of it. So it is like it's more of a democratic process that is being talked about. So you have a group, you take the group, and then you actually collect and come to that particular a common consensus, which is like which majority agreed or whatever that is going to come into picture. Okay, so compromise. I don't have to talk about compromise, so we know what compromise is. So negotiation. This is also to some extent we have actually talked about what exactly the negotiation is. And what are the choices that are available? You actually go and negotiate to make sure that you actually we talked about both the range negotiation and normal negotiation. So both is under this particular point. Okay, problem solving. So this is again having that particular sitting together, brainstorming, making sure thinking out of the box, and then come to that particular solve the problem together. That is exactly what this is talking about. Okay. So now comes superordinate goal. Okay. So basically here superordinate goals is nothing but you have like two parties and both needs to sit together so that a common goal can be achieved. So without cooperation, if this particular goal cannot be achieved, I mean, this goal cannot be achieved. Okay. So these goals are something which are high valuable and unattainable without help of other parties. So that is what is the superordinate goal. Okay, so here you bring all the parties who are involved in that particular goal and bring it together so that this superordinate goal can be solved, right? So uh, so that the common desire, or rather the common goal, can be achieved by mutual cooperation. Okay, smoothing is actually playing down that particular differences and elevating the common interests. You are actually reducing the negative part and you are elevating the positive part. Okay, so that is exactly what smoothing is. So it is process of playing down the differences that exist between individuals and groups. Okay, so that is exactly what smoothing is all about. Okay, so now we are almost in the end. So what are the positive outcomes of conflicts? We already talked about positive outcomes, right? I mean, if you resolve the conflict, then the relationship is going to foster in a better way. If you neglect it, it is going to actually take to the other extreme. So it is going to promote understanding, motivate each other. It is going to improve the out of the box thinking. Unless and until you have out of the box thinking, you can't resolve the conflict. So it is going to improve the out of the box thinking. Okay, so it stimulates a greater feeling of identity. Yourself, you'll understand the other people as well. Okay, so I think this section is something that you could actually write by yourself or read. So committees are one of the most common subunits found in this. So there could be committees and task force groups which could really, bring those. See, we talked about some of the things here, right? Like integration and consensus management and those kind of things. You could have, you could have something like those particular things organized by these task force, right? So now last part, personality conflict and relationship. Okay, so these are so here we are talking about interpersonal relationships and conflict between these. Okay, so some of the basic management skills which are required to get this particular conflict sorted is: you need to be professional, calm, you need to learn how to work as a team, you should have proper communication between yourself, you need to give importance to the relationship. That is exactly what it is. Okay, and you need to actually know what is the proper chain of command. So who is what, you need to know. Whom you need to listen, you need to know, right? So basically this is like you have an idea of what is the hierarchy, how you need to actually follow, whether it is your word that needs to actually go in, or his word, whoever you are in conflict with, you need to know who is authority for what, right? So this is what is the personality conflict, and this completes the conflict management. So just going around on what exactly we have done on conflict management, we learned about the definition of conflict, types of conflict, what causes the conflict, what are the conflict resolution styles, principles of conflict resolution, interest-based relationship approach, and 5 different styles of conflict resolution. And then we talked about what are the steps, techniques, components of conflict resolution. Okay, and what is the stress and how stress is related to the resolution of conflict. And then we talked about preventive techniques and other techniques, and what are the positive outcomes of the conflict, right? From the questions point of view, if you see the questions that are being asked, right, these are the various questions that are coming in this chapter, right? First is, what is conflict? What are the sources? What are the principles of conflict? And what are the techniques to resolve the conflict? What are the components of conflict resolution? So basically, these components, okay, and the above one, the definition, sources, and principles. These are the ones which are most talked about. Okay, as far as the the questions are concerned. So it is moderately distributed. None of these questions are very frequent. I think one or the other question might come in the conflict, but they are not so frequent as the other chapters as such. But what I see is this conflict resolution is repetitive in itself in this particular unit. The same thing, same points come in various directions within the same unit. Right? I mean, I think it is rephrased in different ways. So that's all about conflict resolution. Right? So we finished two today. One is commitment, now resolving the conflicts.